The body is round.
Human beings like round numbers. 999 views on a video is practically the same as 1,000 views, but we don't celebrate it the same way we do when we see a nice round 1,000. It's just a thing that we do because our brains weren't really made to do math properly. With that in mind, a big problem comes when it's time to celebrate gaming milestones. For example, what to do when your franchise finally hits the 10th game. The fabled X that is the envy of so many other franchises that didn't make the cut. Well, let's be real, that is one of the best problems to have in your life. If you're working on a franchise and it hits the 10th entry, you must have been doing something right. Nonetheless, all of that means that there must be also a special kind of pressure to deliver something even more special than ever before. Sure, you're in a great spot now, but if you miss, your mistakes will also be amplified tenfold. All eyes are on you, buddy, no pressure. So, how did Falcom decide to tackle this problem with Ys X Nordics, the 10th game in their cult action RPG series? Well, Ys has been getting bolder and bolder over time, as it started on the PC-88 as a solo adventure with one playable main character, before making its way to the handhelds and getting adventures with a full party, and then going full HD on consoles as the parties just kept getting bigger and more complex, culminating on Ys 9, delivering not only several playable party members, but complex layouts to navigate through using brand new slick movement systems, reaching a peak of gameplay both in and out of combat. Where does one go from there? How does one go even bigger and more ambitious than that? The answer Falcom settled on is, you don't. In fact, Ys X Nordics scales back on almost everything the series has been building up to. Instead of a full party, you only get 2 playable characters, and while you do get some sleek movement mechanics, they are noticeably toned down. You could be forgiven for not even noticing this game is the 10th entry in the series because of how much it just feels like business as usual. This is not a milestone celebration where every character returns, or a victory lap using lore from all of the games, no. The developers decided that they shouldn't go bigger just for the sake of it, and instead delivered a laser-focused adventure that wouldn't feel out of place anywhere else in the series. It is only fair then that, in chronological order, Ys 10 takes place right after Adol's first adventure in the flying island of Ys. The first 2 Ys games were both parts of the same big adventure, so chronologically Ys 10 is like the 3rd game in the series. And so, Adol Christine, our courageous, red-headed protagonist, is still relatively new to adventuring with only one big adventure under his belt so far. But he's already a big adventure head. He almost never has voice dialogue in the game, but he does very often get 2 different options to respond to characters, and one of them is almost always adventure. I love him so much, this guy just gets me. Our second protagonist is Karja Balta, a no-nonsense Viking woman who introduces herself by straight up murdering a man because he didn't pay his dues to her tribe to sail in her waters. All of that happens within the first 10 minutes of the game, and that's how you know she isn't fucking around. Unfortunately, the man she killed was the captain of the ship Adol was traveling in, so he's forced to take refuge in the nearest island. He has a talent for stumbling into adventure though, so it isn't long before he finds a seashell that connects him to a mysterious woman named Lila who gives him the power of mana, a mysterious energy that allows him to kill a race of immortal monsters called the Grieger. Karja, however, isn't having none of that, since only she and her father can use mana in the entire world as far as she knows. Unfortunately for her no-nonsense ways, she and Adol get magically tied together by mana handcuffs that can't extend much further than about 5 meters or so. Anyway, the point is, she is a no-nonsense killer Viking, and he is a Dofus with a penchant for adventure. Together, they have to fight monsters. And they also slowly develop a weird kind of Viking bromance thing, in which they fist bump each other after each boss fight, and they have to learn to trust each other. It's a simple but very effective opposites attract kind of story. Now, I can understand why all of this might make some people actually be turned off by this game, because even though it is a simple story, it actually front loads a lot of lore and setup, and a lot of it just doesn't feel very good at the start. A slow start can work, as we have seen it work in games as recent as Metaphor ReFantazio, but the E series was never really about that. I'm not going to say that they have bad stories, though I did not like the story from the last game, but they have stories in which individual moments have great impact between large segments of dungeon dashing and adventure, and the beginning of this game is not that. In fact, you have to go through so much dialogue and combat areas that are just rooms linked by a single corridor, and the combat is so underdeveloped at the start that I actually thought I might regret buying this game. I thought, is this really is? And this time, as I played, I didn't count the hours unfortunately, but I believe it took about 5 hours before you unlock the hoverboard, and it's only then that the game really gets going. It takes until the beginning of chapter 5 out of 10 for the game to really trust you to go free on the world that the developers built. That's an absolute eternity for an Ys game, since they are usually ready, set, go from moment 1. The good news is, Ys is one of those rare games that trusts you're going to stick with it and leaves the best for last. The story, the dungeons, the boss battles, they all get increasingly better. So while when you first meet those characters they can feel a bit one note or not that interesting, they did grow on me over time, and surprisingly even the main theme of the game, freedom, works really well. It's ironic that Adol and Karja are tied together by magical handcuff, yet together they are the freest characters in the whole gulf that they get to explore. And by the end, the team even serves as a nice little bow to wrap the story up. Overall, as far as stories go, it starts as a C-, but I give it an A+ by the end. Good job, Falcon! So how about that gameplay then? Well, Ys is a very fast-paced action RPG where you cut through enemies like a knife through hot chocolate. The game tries to keep a fast, breezy pace as often as possible, so much that ever since Ys 8, the save point and heal spot doesn't even require you to interact with them. You can just rush nearby to get immediately healed and off you go. Though this time around you do have to activate them the first time you pass by, that alone can give you an idea of the sort of pace this game has. You can play as Adol or Karja, switching between them with the press of a button. Each of them gets their own life bar, and the life bar of the one you're not playing as slowly refills, so it's a good idea to often switch between them. They also both have skills that use SP, and SP slowly refills over time, or if you do skill chains. A game mechanic that I admit I did not understand during all of my 45 hours of playing through the game. But the idea is that Adol has skills that can inflict fire and are all about rushing into battle and getting into close range, while Karja has skills that inflict ice damage and are much more versatile, from area of effect attacks to ranged ones. Some enemies also start with armor, some skills are better at stripping away armor and the others are better at stripping away health, so it's good to have a nice variety of skills equipped for dealing with different types of enemies in different types of situations. Now, on their side, enemies can hit you with normal attacks, but they can also hit you with blue attacks, which are supposed to dodge and can be easily countered by just holding the dodge button, as that makes you run and the game counts that as a dodge, so thank you, video game. Or red attacks, which have to be blocked and are much harder to counterattack as you have to parry with some degree of precision in order to counter them. Parrying, like in many video games, is just intrinsically satisfying, and if you do it during boss battles, you even get to press a button to watch some cool anime shit happening. Truly, the best parry reward we have seen in gaming. But that's not even the coolest thing about guarding. The coolest thing about guarding is that guarding activates duo mode, a mode in which Adol and Karja work together and hit together when you attack, which has its own separate set of skills and a revenge gouge. The revenge gouge slowly fills as you block attacks and really fills up if you parry them. The higher it goes, the more bonus damage you deal when you unleash your next duo skill. Now, duo mode is very overpowered, since you essentially do double the damage, but since you can only use it while blocking, you can't use it while you reposition yourself or you move around, and you have to break away in order to dodge blue attacks as well. This, coupled with the Revenge Gouge, means immediately spamming your skills at the beginning of a fight and then waiting for the SP to fill up again is not in your best interest. Rather, dodging, attacking, and parrying as you fill up the Revenge Gouge and switching between protagonists if their health is too low should be done appropriately to maximize damage and lower your risk of, well, dying. This creates a very nice flow to combat since you have so many different approaches that you have to switch between them and the game never forces you into them, you just have to use them as you find appropriate. For example, I didn't give a shit about any of that and I just spammed the dual skill that breaks away armor regardless of Revenge Gouge when I saw the armor was about to be destroyed because I just hate that shit and I wanted it gone as soon as possible so the real fight could start. Damn, I hate the armor so much. Deep breaths. Okay, let's talk about something that is better. Let's talk about something that is fun. The dungeon design. The dungeon design is really great. I knew it was great when during one of the first dungeons you get thrown right into a grate with a treasure on the other side that you can't get to. The developers know just how to entice me, but you should keep in mind that when I previously called the gameplay dungeon dashing, that wasn't a mistake. Some games dungeon crawl. In those games you have to manage items and slowly but surely make progress to a dungeon. Is dungeon dashes, in the sense that traps and obstacles pose little threat and you can zoom through dungeons like it's nobody's business. In that way, dungeons are mostly straightforward affairs. While they do keep getting bigger and more complex as the game goes along, ending with the 2 final dungeons being home to about 25% total of the game's completion rate. Damn, that is ridiculous. But most dungeons have simple layouts with obvious progression, but almost every room, cave or valley has an optional room next to it or a treasure hidden in a hard to reach spot. This creates a game that allows you to easily breeze through it but rewards paying attention. How truly optional the optional treasures are is up to you. You don't need to have them to beat the game, but not every major upgrade is on the critical path. The developers sometimes just put important stuff like an item that upgrades your maximum SP on a random chest in a corner if they feel like it. So it pays off to scrape every single centimeter of land in order to get everything. The good news is that there is an item that automatically marks the location of every chest on your map if you equip it, and an obligatory piece of gear that you get in the story that allows you to detect buried treasure and also marks everything in your map temporarily, including crystal clusters that you have to break to reach 100% completion, but we'll talk about those later. And going back to talking about combat, this breezing through the game applies even to combat, as the first special ability that you unlock is being able to throw magic ropes, allowing you to swing from specific points to jump over large gaps, but the same ability allows you to pull yourself closer to enemies, so you have little downtime even between enemy groups as you can easily zip from enemy to enemy. You can also, of course, use a skill that launches the enemy into the air, then pull yourself into the air so you can air juggle the enemies. Here's me trying really hard and failing to do that properly, but it is possible. I have seen some people do some crazy combos with it. Just trust me, bro, I'm bad at video games, okay? But Nordics is not just a land game. Oh, no. It is also a very compelling sea game. At the beginning, I didn't know how much of the game would be on the sea or how big the sea would be, and the answer to both of these questions is, it's a lot bigger than I thought. The Sandras, that's the name of the ship, is your home away from home. As you rescue and find people around the seas you navigate, you get to recruit them, and each of them will help you with something, from making meals that gives you buffs,
船の仕事も頑張れそうだね。
お食事は心が豊かになりますね。
to crafting accessories for you to equip. There are towns in the game, but your ship basically works as a JRPG town that travels around with you wherever you go, and where you can interact with your ever-growing adventure family. It is cozy and nice, and I like it very much. As for controlling the ship, be warned that at the beginning of the story it is an old, abandoned ship that was made fit for sailing in a rush, so fittingly it starts out slow as molasses, with your only help being a dash button, because yes, even the ship has a dash button that takes a while to recharge. And you can upgrade it, as you do get to upgrade it with all sorts of different parts as you progress through the game, but overall traveling is really fun. It's not something that you just want to skip. You don't want to just upgrade your speed to maximum and just skip everything, because there's a lot of interesting stuff there. You have to deal with deceptively shallow water currents that throw your boat around, and even wind paths that you can follow to charge your dash faster. Don't expect any big waves or high definition water effects. This doesn't have a AAA budget after all, but on the gameplay side of things, navigating the waters is surprisingly fun by itself. There is, of course, water combat, which does have its own little complexities, but is overall not as complex as land combat, which is the focus. Here, you mainly use your dashes to evade attacks or to ram into enemies, and you eventually unlock a magic shield for protection as well. But your main modes of attack are your standard projectiles and your EX armament, both of which reload on a cooldown basis. But you also have special projectiles that you can equip that have varying characteristics, like stripping away armor, because yes, they are armored boats, or inflicting status effects, because yes, you can inflict status effects on enemy boats. You have to be more careful with those special projectiles though, because they have limited ammunition and you need to dock between battles to reload them. As I said, it's not as complex as land combat, but it is a fun diversion that showcases just how committed the developers are to fleshing out this archipelago setting. All of these different types of gameplay though really come together in the recapture side events. Every Ys game these days has to have a combat-focused type of side activity that is mostly optional, and Nordics has recapture. Basically, the Grieger took over some islands, so you gotta take them back. This works by having you fight using your ship outside of the islands first, having to defeat waves of enemies as you take down static pillars that work like enemy turrets until you complete all the waves. But there is a catch. On the left side of the screen, you get some optional objectives that, when accomplished, levels up your support, granting you special passive abilities depending on your current crew. Some of these side objectives are pretty normal and easy to do, like firing normal or special projectiles. Even if you don't hit anything, you still get to complete them, while others are incredibly infuriating, like sinking 3 enemy ships at once. Have you seen how these ships move? It's like trying to herd cats. Getting a high support level is not important just to get the passive abilities though. They also play a large part in the land portion of the recaptures, because once you conquer the sea, you must then break into the fortress and clear it out. And the higher the level you got in the sea, the more passives you also get on the land attack. Get to the maximum level of 10 and you get some truly broken passives like incredible SP regeneration and a giant boost to your maximum possible revenge gauge. This is super fun because it allows you to just break the game in half and cut down waves of enemies like it was nothing, really bringing out a very Dynasty Warrior style satisfaction with it. If this was the normal gameplay of the entire game, it could end up making things so trivial as to not be fun, but as the payoff from the build-up of completing the side sea objectives, the catharsis is immense, and it works wonders to make the recaptures one of my favorite parts of the game. Once the recapture is done, you get ranked, so you better do your damn best because powerful and limited upgrade items are often hidden behind the ever-elusive S rank. Though honestly, I didn't have any trouble getting S ranks. So long as you take your time doing the seaside objectives, you should be able to wipe everything out with minimal effort. The map, which is usually blank when you first get to a new place, will also be drawn all around the island you recaptured, with points of interest marked in your map. In that way, these are kind of like Ubisoft towers, but way more violent. This is also an opportunity to talk about the way this game treats side objectives, but basically, you can be on the other side of the world and every available side quest will still be showing up on your compass. It is ridiculous, but the game really wants you to complete everything. And honestly, when you get easy fast travel to and from any town and dungeon at any time, with everything being clearly marked on your map, with every place you can visit having clear percentages of everything that you got and everything that you're still missing, Well, it's hard to resist not just doing everything. I, at the very least, did all of the side quests, and I found 100% of the treasures. Hell, I even caught 100% of the fish without meaning to, and I usually don't go for 100%. Yet, I did in this game, and I even did in the previous RPG that I played, Metaphor Refantasio, as well. I wonder if games these days are just working out better ways to push a player towards completion, or if I'm just becoming more of a completionist as I get older. Before we wrap this up, we also need to talk about the PC port of this game. Basically, it is crazy. You can save anywhere and boot the game up instantly, bringing you exactly where you stopped. Every single graphical option you could wish for is available, blazing fast load times, and also, surprisingly, some very deep integration with the brand new just released Steam recording feature, which by the way, I used to record the gameplay used in this very video, and I hope I'll be able to use it on every video going forward because it is just really good. Everything from boss battles to story events are properly marked on the timeline. It's just crazy how good this port is. I have no reservations saying that somehow Nordics on PC is the best way to play the game. And Durante and his team and the stuff that he has been doing with the release of Falcon games on PC is just incredible. So with all of that, you must think Nordics must be the almost perfect title with very little wrong with it. And in that case, you must be new here. Hello, welcome to the channel. This is the part where I talk about what I don't like in the game. Remember the crystal clusters that I mentioned before? It's time to go back to those. You see, in this game, crystals are a currency that can be used in conjunction with different colored mana seeds that you find around in order to create a mana gem that you can then slot in a spot on the mana lines to get passive upgrades to your character, and the lines are separated in levels. Put lots of gems of the same type on the same level and you get to unlock bonus effects like a slightly higher crit rate. In theory, there is nothing wrong with this system, but the problem is that you get to play around and slot different gems and try to find a good setup, only at the end of all your efforts to find out that you only got +4 attack on a game in which your attack number is measured in the hundreds. In a game in which you can equip an accessory to boost your stats by 100, and you regularly get new weapons and armor that already give you the necessary boost to your stats to keep up with the enemies. This means that unfortunately I must classify this upgrade tree into the worst category of upgrade tree. The annoying one where you get small boosts like 5% plus defense at midnight, and it is one that you do not really want to interact with because you're going to keep playing the game the same regardless of what you pick, so it just feels like an annoyance. Upgrade trees should excite you, they should make you think for a while about what you pick between many different great options. An upgrade system where it does not matter what you pick feels like a waste of space. Even worse, the way it is set up visually reminds me personally of the orbment system from the early Trails games. Now, that was a system. Every single orb you slotted in not only affected your stats, but it slowly built up different available skills that you got by slotting the same element on lines that led to one another, and sometimes you needed to connect different elements to create more specific, more powerful skills. That system was incredible. By far, the best system Falcom ever did, and one of the best JRPG mechanics in general. They still haven't been able to surpass that. I think it's time to get off my nostalgia and back on track. It is worth noting that you get points as to unlock slots as you level up, and you must unlock specific slots to get new skills for Adal and Karja, but you don't actually have to slot anything on them in order to use the skills. You just unlock the slot and the skill is yours, which makes the entire thing feel even more pointless. It's like Falcom just knew that people would complain if they had to stay on the screen longer than necessary to get what they actually wanted. This system is far from my only complaint though. Ready for them? Because I do have a lot of nitpicking that I'm going to do right now, okay? I also want to complain that individual skills that focus on enemy armor are useless, since 99% of armored enemies work alone. And this is not an exaggeration. While there are a few battles with multiple armored enemies, most of the time only the most powerful enemy of the pack is armored, meaning that you should always use the armor breaking skill of the duo mode, leaving the individual armor breaking skills that each character has feeling pointless, and the hitbox on the attacks of the flying enemies are all screwed up. Don't even attempt to parry them because 99.9% of the time they will just straight up miss you. And also, the elemental damage that you inflict doesn't really matter much unless you're planning to use an ailment build, which equips items to make it so you deal increased damage to specific ailments. I just went for an Unga Bunga build and equipped whatever dealt more damage, and it worked just fine on normal difficulty. And also you get a weird Persona-like system in which you can get gifts to your crew to upgrade your relationship, but in reality each crew member only has one gift and they only get 2 events, leaving the entire system feeling kind of cute but very underdeveloped. As you can see, Ys x Nordics has a lot of flaws, and yet it is still quite possibly one of the best games of the year. How? It's simple. Think for a bit about what I just said and you quickly notice that none of the problems affected the core gameplay or my overall experience in a negative way. Sure, there were things that felt a little aimless and underdeveloped, but you can just ignore them with no negative consequences. And whenever an enemy had an iffy moveset or hitbox, it pretty much always benefited me, meaning there is absolutely no frustration on my side at all. Hell, I even got an objectively bad moment in which a boss got me stuck on a corner, and it is the one boss battle in which doing so softlocked me. And all I did was laugh. It was hilarious. I just restarted the battle and fought him again because I was just having so much fun. Ys 10 is just plain fun. It is too light and breezy to be frustrating. No bad vibes allowed here. And that showcases a thing that you don't see often. And by that I mean a really rare thing. This is not just a YouTuber exaggeration. This is a game design style that prepared the mechanics for failure. It is an ambitious game, the developers knew that they were being ambitious, but they planned things out in a way to minimize any damage from their ambition while laying out a path to test things out and hopefully to improve them on the next installment while still delivering a fantastic entry. Sure, wasted potential might be frustrating, but it is barely a dent on the experience when you still get 40 plus hours of gaming goodness to experience. Though the question is still in the air on whether something is really ambitious if you isolate any controversial mechanical decisions to this degree. We do have another, more pressing question to discuss though, quite possibly the question this video was made to answer. Is Ys Nordics better than Lacrimosa of Dana? The answer is no. That one is still my favorite Ys game, and you should probably start with that one because it is old enough to often show up on sale, but Nordics is still a damn fine game. It is a good starting point for new fans into the Ys series and a good new entry for people who have been here for a while, and if you have no interest in this series and you just want to enjoy a damn good action RPG, it works as well. It's just a really fun time that almost everybody can easily enjoy. I do say almost everybody, I do not even know if that is grammatically correct, someone correct me, but I did say almost everybody because, like I mentioned, this game has been engineered to be as streamlined as possible. You even get little blue symbols on top of the NPC heads when they have new dialogue that turn grey when the new dialogue is over, with every single NPC with new dialogue being clearly marked on the map as well. This world is not a living, breathing world. It can at times even feel like a checklist, but it is a fun, good-looking, and wild checklist with a lot of heart. And sometimes that's exactly what the doctor ordered. If you need something with a bit more friction, shall we say? People have been saying good things about Dragon's Dogma 2, or maybe try out Stalker 2 instead. But as for me, this is Penguin Overdrive, telling you that I'm going to sign off, and that yes, I did leave Karja with her Viking attire and the helmet on too. She looks cool as shit, man, and we need more anime women that look cool as shit. I just love that. I just love women that will actually just kill me. Okay, so this is usually where I would end the video. Doing a little joke, a little funny to end the video on. A little cut-off gag. I overuse that, a lot of people overuse that, it's not that funny, but it's a decent enough way to end a video, you know, a YouTube video. It doesn't have to be super brilliant, and that would have been the case. But I was busy and technically still am busy, very busy with work recently, and I don't have as much free time as I would like to have, and I really decided to take some extra time so I could finish the video properly, and it just so happened that before I could release it, 2 major events happened. First, unfortunately, is a very sad event. Masayuki Kato, founder of Falcom, has passed away at the age of 78. Now look, I'm not good at doing this kind of thing. I'm very afraid of screwing up. I don't know how to handle this subject very well. I'm just an awkward man trying to talk about Japanese RPGs, but it would have been worse if I said nothing, and I have to say I am very grateful to this man. Without him, we wouldn't have such great RPG series like Dragon Slayer, The Legend of Heroes, Zwei, Xanadu, or indeed the E-series. He is an absolute legend of the Japanese RPG scene, and he will be missed. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is something that they have just announced. They have announced it, in fact, just a couple hours before the time I'm recording this, and they announced a remastered release of Ys Nordics called Proud Nordics, a quote-unquote significantly upgraded version of Ys Nordics, with a new story set on a new island, and there's also going to be hoverboard racing and arena battles, and everything looks a lot more detailed, but they also talk about some interesting and weird things like improved exploration and new mana actions. So, are they just going to redo all of the dungeons and islands so they have new spots where you can use those actions? Or is all of that cool new stuff relegated to the new island that they're going to add? If the new island is the size of the final dungeons, of one of them, or maybe even both, who knows? I could see it being a neat, maybe a very chunky little chunk of content, but I don't think that merits the significantly upgraded moniker that they're putting on it. Now, I don't regret playing the game right now, because like I said, I still think it's a fantastic game. Some people might disagree. Some people might be like, oh, okay, I can see that they might want to upgrade this. Since, like I said, this doesn't feel like a milestone title. It's just another Ys, but it is a very good Ys, and I enjoyed it. And the English version of Proud is probably only coming out in 2026 anyway. So, I don't regret playing it right now. Maybe I'll revisit it. It's a good game. I rarely revisit re-releases. I didn't play Persona 5 Royal to this day, but maybe for this one, it's not that long. I could see myself replaying it, but it's still very weird to hear about this re-release only 2 months after the English release. I know the original release was in 2023 in Japan, but that's still a brand new remaster 2 years later. That's weird. Well, maybe not weird to Persona if you talk about 5 or Monster Hunter, but I still think personally it is very rare for this to happen. And I don't remember Falcom ever doing this updated re-release. I think the last time they did was Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus or something like that. It was a ridiculous title, but they already did that once, but it's very rare. And it's just weird. But what makes this even weirder is that next year, Falcom is going to be releasing a remake of the first Trails game, and they're going to be making new worldwide releases on platforms like the Switch for Oath of Infelgana and Memories of Celceta, and now they are announced Proud Nordics. And it's a killer lineup for a relatively small company, I have to admit, but it's also all remakes and re-releases, given that and that's a bit weird, given that every single year they always came up with a new game. And it's probably not a good idea to do so, but one can't help but speculate about what's going on at Falcom for them to be re-releasing and remaking things at such a high rate. But let's think positively though. Let's not try to be all negative. Let's think positively. Maybe with a re-release, they can not only add new things to Nordics, but maybe they can fix the release line mechanics and make it into an interesting system that properly rewards the amount of time that you have to sync on it to set it up. And maybe they can include a 6-hour-long Carja sex